Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Cronk.
Well, good day, Gig Nation. It is James Cronk back with another Golf Industry Guru podcast. And today we are going to go down under and talk to Jeff Blunden from Golf Business Advisory Services, GBAS. He's the managing director, and I've bumped into Jeff a couple times in my travels over the years, and he is always someone that not only knows what's going on in Australia and New Zealand, but knows the things that are happening in the golf industry really all the way throughout Europe and Asia and elsewhere. He's incredibly diverse, incredibly smart when it comes to the game of golf, the world of golf, the statistics of golf, certainly with GBAS. And we're going to ask him about some other things with club benchmarking and KPIs and all kinds of topics that whether or not you are a golf club operator in Canada, in Asia, in the United States, in Europe, or specifically, certainly in Australia, New Zealand, Jeff is someone that can help you out and provide you some guidance and certainly give us some tidbits of information that I'm looking forward to chatting with him about. So, Jeff, welcome to the Golf Industry Guru podcast.
Thanks, James. It's good to be here, and it's good to see you again.
You bet, even if it's on Zoom, because there's no doubt about it. We're recording this right now. If I read one more article about how challenging things are in down under, it's not a pleasant thing right now with regards to COVID. Has made a bit of a resurgence, a bit of a comeback.
Well, we are pursuing a zero COVID strategy, which is just, okay, we're an island, so theoretically it's possible, but pursuit of zero is a big call. And when the little embers of COVID pop up here and there, panic stations by state governments, and we're now in our sixth lockdown. 7 days became 14, it's going to be 28. New South Wales is over 500 cases, 600 cases yesterday. It's trying times. We're all just going to be patient. I'd wiped off 2020 as a year, but I think now we're going to wipe out 2021 as a year. Whilst personally we've all had these struggles, the golf industry has benefited from some of the outcomes of COVID, from a changing lifestyle perspective and I guess importance of outside and being in fresh air and being able to exercise. It's the whole baseline for golf in this market's changed completely.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. And I was reading I think it was the 2020 report that you guys did on participation in Australia and New South Wales and that whole area. And I think I read something about 29% increase of participation or something like that, or 20+% increase in participation. But I assume in that area, you guys, like you said, are experiencing the same kind of boom, assuming that we can get outside, are experiencing the same kind of boom in golf that is happening in the rest of the world right now.
Yeah, we've had competition rounds. This is a competition rounds driven market. There's issues around that, but we are that way inclined. We're seeing plus 20% growth year on year in that space, but we've also seen new member demand into golf clubs be more than double what it historically has been. So the existing participant is playing more, and there are new people coming into the game. So given it was one of the only sports available to be played, all the competing interests were pushed away. It was this opportunity that would never have otherwise happened. No marketing budget could have ever created the opportunity that COVID did create. So, whilst we've received the benefit now, short term, as always, the goal is to ensure that that plays out for you in the long term. So retention is going to become really important in the next, in the next 1 to 2 years.
In your conversations, Jeff, with your clients and when the work that you guys do and in just even your own perspective, what do you, if you were going to look at your crystal ball and say, let's get this question on the table right away. If you're looking at your crystal ball in 5 years, 10 years, how do you think golf is going to look like when life gets back post-COVID of some kind of different new normal? What do you think is going to be the fallout?
Well, hopefully the opportunity that's present delivers or encourages clubs to reinvest in asset improvement. Here in Australia particularly, the not-for-profit mentality has really put a brake on timely asset reinvestment. Few clubs have been making the money annually they really need to be making to ensure their assets are reinvested in to the extent they should be. Members believe if you're making too much profit, you're charging me too much. My view is no, you need to make as much profit as you can, because I can't give it back to you as a dividend. I have to put it back into the asset, and the asset is your benefit. Improved asset, improved benefit, improved value. So I hope that we see asset reinvestment that improves the value proposition, that improves the appeal, improves the diversity of offer, appeals to a broader market. So you don't have all your eggs in one basket in terms of just the core golfer. It's equally appealing to other segments of the market which are as less tapped as the core golfer currently is.
Mm-hmm. And so let's just talk about GBS and kind of the clients that come to you. And so tell me a little bit about, obviously I've done some research, but tell our listeners about the services that you guys provide and the kind of clubs that you work with and what they ask you to do for them.
Sure. My interest is improving everyone's knowledge. I believe that if we all have more knowledge, all boats float on a rising tide. We all make better decisions. The industry benefits because we all know more about what we're doing. For 20 years in this space, I've been filling knowledge gaps. I was once told by a GM in my early days, we don't compare annual reports with any other club because we think they're too different. I kind of made it my mission to say, right, I think there's something in that. I think we can all learn from each other a bit more. And that's where benchmarking evolved from, filling those excuses that people were using for not knowing more, for not making better decisions because they didn't know that piece of information. So really now as an extension of that, it's having good information available, arguably the most informed information available to enable clubs to make well-informed decisions about their future and how they will map their path forward with regard to the hurdles that they face and that society presents.
And have you always been kind of a fascinated with numbers kind of guy? I mean, from a golf standpoint and from a operation standpoint, have you always been statistics driven and kind of understanding how the benefit is of numbers and KPIs helps you make decisions?
Yeah, my background was in hotels and resorts, so I was the financial analyst at a major hotel company, and look, you can't dodge the numbers. They are the truth. They are real. It's what you can learn from them. So. Yes, I work hard to understand them, but it's what you do with them that matters most. And importantly, how you interpret them, and then how they connect with each other. What impacts one another, and then connecting the dots and saying, well, these are the numbers. This is what it all means. So I've worked hard to establish a really solid set of industry facts, and then I work hard to establish a solid set of client facts, because we all need to sing from the same hymn book. If some directors think the truth is X and some directors think the truth is Y, then their belief in a certain strategy that we're trying to execute, if they don't believe the reason we're doing it because they have a different sense of truth, then to me that says that strategy is not going to be successful because there's not buy-in. So Let's get all on the same page, understand the facts, understand the market. And James, you know as well as any that the success around planning is about continuity of execution, not just the board of today, but the board of tomorrow, taking over the plan of today, not changing the plan of today. If the plan of today is really well founded, really well referenced, a new board, unless the world's changed or the baseline's changed, then there's no reason for the plan not to continue to be executed. And the best clubs, as you know, are the ones who continually execute successfully, and they get that longevity and they get continuity of execution and they get to a better place without going 1 year left, 1 year right, spinning the wheels and actually getting nowhere over a certain period of time. That said, we all know that certain management teams and club boards line up well together. I encourage my clients, when that happens, run hard, because there will be times that board and management don't line up as well together, and the growth might not be as high as what it could be because of a little bit extra dysfunction. But when they are aligned, go hard to try and get to that slightly higher level, which then you obviously need to attain.
If in that vein, if you're a club manager and you're working with a board that is not 100% functional and is not able to run hard, do you have any kind of suggestions for GMs, club managers on conversations to have or processes to go through? Obviously, you can try to convince them to hire a consultant to come in and give them advice, but putting that aside, how do you think some clubs come to that point where they are willing to go through that exercise of looking at their plan and where things are supposed to go?
The GMs I work with, I always tell them, hey, you are the paid expert at your club. There's no one at your facility earning more money than you. You are the leader. You are meant to know the most. But that said, you've got to pick your battles. Whilst you're paid the most, you know the most, you're vulnerable to the happiness of your employer with you, who might not know as much as you and may come from a different background and may have a different agenda. So pick your battles. But if you keep putting facts on the table, well-referenced facts, well-considered facts, then it's up to the board to make that decision. The strength of information behind the recommendation, I believe, eventually outweighs an irrational, unfounded, perhaps inaccurate view.
Yeah, and we talk about the numbers. I think that in our industry, I think our industry is very interesting in that, for example, I think, and obviously in the hotel business, the restaurant business, there's some standard numbers that you would use. There's some, there might be 3, there might be 4, there might be 10, but there's a handful of numbers you can use. In our industry, when we have a restaurant that's attached to a retail store, that's attached to a limited amenity like tea times, that's attached to a facility that is like a golf course with, whether you might have 200 acres and somebody else might have 300 acres. And, the cost per acre of maintaining is one golf course is flat. The other golf courses is on a mountainside. I mean, there's so many numbers and there's so many ways to look and interpret those numbers. And there's so many, but it's so important to at least have numbers to present your case, your case, whether you survey your members or you survey your employees or you compensation, like you talk about when you're looking at the compensation for a head golf professional or for a chef or for a general manager. Obviously, if you know what the market is paying, it better supports your argument when you want to pay X if you know everybody else is paying Y.
Yes.
And is that tell me about club benchmarking and club benchmarking in Australia, because I'm certainly aware of club benchmarking out of the United States and we use it in Canada and it's a fantastic service. And I'm a big fan of the work that club benchmarking does. Has club benchmarking been part of your scope for a long time? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so We licensed the platform out of the US from Ray Cronin and his team. They first came to Australia. They were introduced to Golf Management Australia by the then president of GMA, David Burton, former GM of New South Wales Golf Club, who now works with me. 2013, it was offered initially as an association service. Self-reporting, self-data cleansing, self-loading, low fee, but you, the client, or you, the subscriber, do it all yourself. And it just didn't work. I was facilitating that in the back end in providing support and helping set the structure up, Australianising the platform, terminology and questions and whatnot, and then some of the reporting out of it. Then it just wasn't working from an association perspective. Data was tardy, wasn't always accurate, questions always weren't answered correctly. It became unreliable data. So there's no, there's no greater concern. It's like, well, hang on, this is not right. Why am I paying? Or what's this service all about? So when that didn't work, I said, well, we'll take it over. And we'll guarantee accuracy. We'll do the coding and loading. We'll do the cleansing. We'll do all the things around it, and then we'll report on it. We'll share reports with our subscribers with individual insights into certain areas of the business, and then we added the salary survey onto it as a certain module, so it becomes an absolute source of fact. And with longevity now, 2014 now through to 20, we've just picked up 2021 year-end June trial balances. It's the trend that's the interesting story. It's never the absolute number, really. It's what's the length of that trend. So whenever we have a new subscriber, we always ask for at least 5 years worth of trial balances. They go, well, why does 2016 matter now? It's like, well, it's the trend. It's the journey that is important, because the journey you've been on will somewhat determine the future journey or the shape of the future journey. You're either
going uphill or you're going downhill, but you're not going uphill and downhill at the same time.
No, exactly. So it's not 1 year's data point. It's not a trend. It's not a trend. I want to understand what the bigger picture is. COVID's thrown a whole bit of chaos into some of the trends, particularly around wage costs and the level of government support that clubs got down here. But it's the longer a club subscribes, arguably, the more valuable it becomes. A is a historical reference point for the numbers back then, so they can, if they ever need to, they know what was our subscription back in 2016. Well, here I don't have to go and dig through some archived file on a different computer to find where was our subs notice for the year. Here it is.
Right.
Here's the growth over time. So it produces wonderful data really quickly that you couldn't otherwise generate so quickly without making a bunch of phone calls, spending a bunch of time trying to line it all up. Is this the same? Is this apples and apples? Is this including a levy? Is that GST or not?
Yes.
Look, GMs have got enough fires to fight every day than having to worry about collecting some of the things that boards ask them to collect post a board meeting. So, we've said, look, we collect a lot of information. Some of it you don't need at all,
right?
Perhaps ever. But if you do, if you want to know what the average cart fleet size is in northern Sydney, I can tell you. Now, it's not a conversation we're going to have often, but it's a reference point. A reference point for your decision. It's not saying it's right or wrong. Being above or below a benchmark isn't good or bad. It's a reference point for where you're at. You just need to understand why you're different, why you're up, why you're down. It might be a building design that requires two staff people to be in two different places, whereas a different club up the road might have a better design that allows one person to cover two spaces.
Yes.
You can never change. Well, you can change the building if you want to, but one will always likely have a higher wage cost than the other simply because of physical layout.
Yes.
If you understand the reason why, that's that's the explanation you want to make to a board about why are we above that benchmark. Well, it's not bad management. It's by design that we are constrained in that space,
or by choice, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But our club's going to have the restaurant open from 7 a.m. until midnight every single day, whatever might be the thing.
Yeah.
Jeff, if a club was talking to you or a new client was talking to you and they were talking about the numbers and all these types of things, if I asked you kind of what would you say are the 1, 2, 3, 4 most important kind of numbers that you if you looked at these things on paper, you could kind of identify that's a healthy club versus that's a club that's about to go to out to pasture. What would those numbers be for you that looks at numbers all the time and understands benchmarking and KPIs?
My view on this has changed a little bit in the last 12 to 24 months. The longer I do this, the more blunt I get with my clients, the more direct. I think they appreciate that, but it comes from the heart. It's not disrespectful. But we can't kid ourselves, James, with regard to the future cost of replacement infrastructure. We just can't. We can't kick it down the road forever. It has to be funded at some stage. So let's start to work towards providing for infrastructure reinvestment. So in most cases, that comes from club profitability. Yes, some below-the-line entrance fee income, maybe some below-the-line investment income, but largely for most of my clients, 80% of the net available capital every year is coming from operating profit, right? So what target should that be as a percentage of income to drive our future capital needs? So let's work backwards from our capital needs. Our capital needs are X. Our operating profitability therefore needs to be Y. Therefore, working back up the P&L, really where do we need to get the revenue base and the expense base to help deliver that? Yes, we've got to consider the market, however. That's the challenge. It's like, okay, that's where we need to be. How do we get there? How do we do that, given we've got 4 other clubs within 20 k's within 20 k's of our site, and we've got price pressure, and we've got a declining membership base. Whatever the nuances or the legacy issues for that club are. That's then the work I get into is like, what is your map? Everybody's goals are largely the same, but everyone's coming from a different starting position to achieve those goals. And they've got different legacy issues because whilst they're all golf clubs, the structures are over time have different nuances to them, and where they're bound by constitutions which require, and sometimes 75% approval of memberships to change. Some of those changes that you'd like to do aren't ever going to be possible because the cohort who are going to vote, they're more likely to vote no than yes. But I mean, that's one benefit of COVID is online voting is providing for a much greater uptake in annual elections and voting for and against certain motions, because you don't have to turn up to the club on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock in the middle of winter and put your hand in the air.
Right.
You can just be at your computer and vote, and it's live, and boom. So, the rally of the troops.
Decisions are made.
Yeah, it's a bit easier to get some of the, well, not easier. It's more people are participating who possibly might not normally participate because of life gets in the way and they just can't get to a certain venue to vote for a certain issue on a certain day. Right.
What's from an operation standpoint, certainly debt structuring and capital replacement, long-term capital planning, from an operation standpoint, from a day-to-day operation standpoint, are there some numbers or some KPIs that your clubs are most interested in hearing about, every month or each year? What are some of those that tells them where they're at?
what's become particularly apparent pre and post COVID is the member cost per round played.
Yes,
not the operating costs per round played, but the effective member cost per round played, because we've seen frequency of membership play increase up to 15-20%. So where frequency increases and the subscription fee doesn't go along with that, the cost to participate actually declines. Great for the member. Hey, it's now costing me a lot less per round than I used to because I'm now playing more, but not great for the club. So whilst for the last 20 years, post 1998, when Greg Norman was last time the number one in the world, Australia had been losing 1.5% members a year. Now that's a blended outcome across metropolitan regional markets. But we've never had supply. We've always had demand working against supply. We've had, in some cases, oversupply. We've had fragmentation, and therefore not enough clubs get to scale where really good volume falls out the bottom. So we've been really reluctant on price to really drive that. So now demand's on our side, in that we've got more demand that we can keep up with. Members are now being limited to the number of times they can play per week. Members are going on waiting lists to get a tee time. If they don't get a tee time, then they go to the priority queue next time. It literally is how to manage a finite asset in terms of daylight, in terms of tee times, along with the government restrictions about number of people per tee time. So it's causing all sorts of chaos at the moment around tee time optimization. But their cost per member round has fallen significantly. So my view is you've never had a better chance to double down on where price needs to be. You've got demand on your side. So there's nowhere else they can go. Everywhere's full. You want to leave here and go to the back of the queue somewhere else? Okay, I've got a whole bunch of people waiting to get in the door. Look, membership loyalty is important, and doing the right thing by them is important, but it's also important to clearly communicate your vision and your goals for the club and where it needs to get to, and take them on that journey of improvement. And the journey of improvement means better funding of assets, means appropriate payment for the services being received given the market conditions that exist. Again, if I just came in and spoke to the board about that with no data, they go, well, that's just your opinion. But I say to my clients, none of this is my opinion. I'm just interpreting the data. Tell me if I'm wrong. Here's the data. Here's my interpretation. So the strategic plans we end up writing, I say to my clients, these often write themselves because the action or the strategy becomes almost obvious once you present the data. It's like, clearly, Jeff, I get it. Yep, we're weak in that area. We need to do something about that. Let's do X. So they're not my strategic plans. Yes, we facilitate them, but presenting good, robust data, they buy into the outcome. And as well as anyone, James, that if it's not a club plan, it doesn't get executed. It's like, no. we didn't believe in that. We never did it. So, well, there's nothing more disheartening as a consultant working hard for the club on a really good document and then seeing it not executed. It's almost heartbreaking because you put so much invest into their improvement. So you've got to have them believe in it. It's got to be theirs, and they've got to understand how it's all come together and be able to talk to it publicly. We are doing this because of X. We know that X to be true because of our data sources, our reference points, and all the research we've done. And therefore, I think it takes the members on a easier journey than we just need to raise prices. Okay, well, why? What's the backstory to that?
So with regards to prices and with regards to that kind of concept, of like you said, the increased demand that's happening all over, And everyone's got a different individual scenario, and everyone's got a different individual club with their own different version of who they are, and hopefully their own why. And, for every Volkswagen, there's a Tesla, and, for every diamond ring, there's a rock. I mean, and at the end of the day, you can't be everything to everybody. But how do you have a conversation, or what is the conversation you have with clubs when they try to talk about setting their price? And because to me, one of the most complicated things, to me, golf is not a commodity. It's like, it's an experience. So when you say, we're worth $20 and, but that golf course thinks they're worth $40, well, the experience better be double the experience for the yes. and once again, based on supply and demand and based on a bunch of other factors. But it's not like, globally the price of lettuce is, set at $2 yes. and so golf should be $2 for every round of golf. Yes. So how do you kind of tackle that with regards to the price issue from your perspective?
Yeah, well, again, working back up, knowing what your EBITDA outcome is, which is really operating profit prior to depreciation costs, and understanding your revenue mix. The two levers we have here are subscription revenue and guest screen fees. Understanding what mix they represent in terms of rounds played, but also revenue. Where is the opportunity within either to better optimise that outcome? And in this country, particularly, we have structural issues around membership categories. So, our big clubs carry a member count of, let's say on average, say 1,200 members. At the US clubs we look at, that equivalent club's like 400 members. So we've carried this high number, assuming lower frequency of play, but at a lower cost. So as the frequency has now grown, we've got this real pressure on. We're actually carrying too many people because they can't get on the golf course, and that's causing a diminished value proposition where members of some of our best clubs are now saying, I don't care, I just want a tee time, pack it in at 7-minute intervals, I just want to play. I don't care about the condition of the golf course, I just want to play. How does that line up to a club's value proposition if they're one of the best in the country? It's like, well, this is not how we do things here. Dave Burton just wrote an article about Maslow's theory and the hierarchy of needs, and he's concluded that we have proven that to be true at the moment, given there's this demand at almost, don't worry about what I'm being charged for it. I just want to get it. So when we talk about subscription increases annually, it's with reference to what our capital needs are. It's with reference to our revenue mix. Obviously, what the historical trend has been, and then also the dilution. The dilution impact is often overlooked in that a 3 or 4 or 5% increase doesn't necessarily translate into the equivalent increase in total revenue because it gets diluted through the membership mix. And where there's got different categories with different access rights and different pricing, it might deliver a lower increase than you want. So it's not about it's pricing, but it's got to impact the revenue piece. So it's understanding how that all flows through. With reference to the rest of the business. And look, the benchmarking tool also does a great job of understanding expense benchmarks. Not that I've found here that a lot of clubs carry a lot of expense fat. They all run quite lean and mean. So the way to future improvement is not through belt tightening. It's through growing the revenue funnel and putting more through the top, understanding what the market wants and what you can offer. So it's those are the exciting discussions that we like to have because it's about really mapping your future with really good intel.
was discounting a challenge down under? Was in Australia, New South Wales, and New Zealand? Was it a challenge in the discounting factor pre-COVID? Price slashing, or
I wouldn't say discounting. I'd say reluctance to push it. We track pricing obviously per category per year. While subscription fees will always go up by 1% or 2%, again, that's relevant to the baseline. 2% on $2,000 is really not a lot of money in terms of incremental improvement. But it's amazing how no change has been seen through green fee pricing, through golf cart pricing. They're just, some of them are unchanged for 5, 6, 7 years, which is why has that been left alone? Thankfully, our research of our clients has just found that post-COVID, that one of the major levers that has been adjusted is green fee pricing. On average, that's gone up by 10%, whereas subscriptions went up by 3%. That said, 25% of clubs chose not to increase their subscriptions at all. Now, whilst that sounds harsh, we're dealing with certain lockdowns in certain states.
Yes.
We're dealing with some. For instance, in Victoria right now, also in metropolitan Victoria in Melbourne, golf courses are shut, whereas in Sydney they're open within 5K radius, but restricted to 2 balls. So, whilst
tough to take your green fees up 20%, your subscriptions up 20%,
and where and given the different timing of subscription years. I think about 40% of our clubs are June year end. The rest go through September and January, subject to when your year end falls and your price review happens. Right. It's got to reflect the lockdown realities that you've endured. So some clubs have said, well, given the lockdown, there's no increase. But some clubs were lucky where they had a short lockdown, but then they opened and got a boom and said, well, now we're going up 5%. And now they're locked down again. So it's all, it's subject to when you're able to push the button.
So my last question for you, Jeff, is a bit of a challenging one, at least one that I think is challenging, because I'm going to get you to pick something, because right now there's no doubt that we're all in a time of change and a time of flux, and there's lots of different things. Who could predict where we are today? Even 3 months ago, we thought we were going to be back, running and going strong. But if you were a club right now and you're thinking, what's the one thing I can do that's going to maximize my upside from coming out of this boom in golf, this increased participation? What's that thing that's going to kind of keep, either I'm going to keep my members happy, or I'm going to be able to charge more money for them, or I'm going to steal them from my competition, or I'm going to raise my club status from where it is today to where I want it to be 3 years from now. What do you think, from a customer standpoint, what do you think are the things that a club could do or should focus on to best maximize, their profitability through their experience? Like what if you're going to spend $1 and not on replacing a carpet, or you're going to focus your energies on something, what do you see those clubs that are the leaders in that you work with? What would you suggest that a club that wants to be a leader should be focusing on?
This is going to sound like a direct plug, but it's really doubles down the importance of strategic planning. It is acknowledging the changes that have happened and communicating your vision. The baseline has changed. Any strategic plan written prior to COVID is now completely out of date, possibly from a timing perspective, but also from what's the current reality perspective? We can't give profit back to members as a dividend, in this country at least. It can only go back into asset improvement or into cash reserves for spending on a future time. So it's communicating the vision and how you want to execute. It's an exciting time to be a GM and a board member if you can take the members on that journey and show them, hey, this has given us a wonderful opportunity. You're part of that opportunity. This is what we want to do with the opportunity that we've been given, and not be and not perhaps let this opportunity pass. Strike while the iron's hot. Common phrase, but probably never more apt in terms of this market. And look,
being proactive and not reactive.
Absolutely, it's and look, that'll be a combination of all sorts of things. It might be membership restructuring. It might be pricing. It might be looking at other revenue streams that might have appeared and now have a bit more opportunity behind them. But it's the combination of all of those which have to be communicated to the best of the board's ability to a membership base to show them what the journey looks like.
That's awesome.
Given that the baseline and what we're dealing with now, pre and post, given the opportunity that it allows us actually probably to catch up a little bit to the delayed infrastructure investment that we've had. I keep saying to my clients, your mindset is you're not for profit, you're not for loss, you're not for tax. Yeah. It's think of it as it's not a bad thing. You've just got to communicate what you're going to do with it. There'll be pushback if you haven't communicated that well enough. But if you're communicating it well enough, I think your goal's very defendable. You might not win that battle. Members might not be happy to say, well, at least we know what we're doing with it. It's not just going to sit there with no plan behind it.
Yeah.
Arguably, unless you've got a plan, a big capital need, then the asset base should never get too large because we can't do anything else with it. What are we waiting for? A rainy day? Well, we've got a really sunny day here. Let's really make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jeff, how can people, I know you work all over and have clients all over. How can people reach out to you best?
golfbest.com is the website, and people can find all sorts of information about us, some of our public articles, some of our published reports, our newsletters. We have a data portal available which shares some information about the Aussie market. But look, James, as I said from the outset, my goal is if we all know more, then we all make better decisions and all boats float on that rising tide. So, we've come out of, when I first started in this space, there was no industry data at all. Literally, there was national government reports on participation across all sports. That was it. So we've come a long way. So the information gap has been filled in a lot of areas. So we can now have more intelligent conversations. We can get past first base and not have to just only get to first base. You don't make runs unless you don't get past first base. So yes. If we know more, we make better decisions, we execute better, the outcomes are better, the customer sees that, the member sees that. It becomes this cycle that becomes a positive cycle as opposed to a negative cycle where everything's going against you. That's my goal.
I love it. Thank you, sir. That was, that message applies to any club, no matter where they are in the world, and it's a great message. So, thank you, Jeff, for being our guest on Golf Industry Guru. Really appreciate it.
Super, James. Great to see you again.
Yeah, you bet. You too. So, thank you, Gig Nation, for listening to this podcast with Jeff Blunden of Golf BAS, Golf Business Advisory Services. Find them at golfbas.com. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
You got it. golfbas.com. So thank you, Jeff. And Gig Nation, as we like to say, we will see you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.